All right, here we go. It's another All-22 Tuesday for the Commanders. We've got a bunch of stuff set up for us. George Carmi is here. Of course, Mark Bullock is here. George, let's see what we've got on the docket for today.
Absolutely. We're about to break down some pretty big plays. We're looking at Howell's interceptions from last week. We're looking at good Howell and basically some of the big plays that he did. We're going to look at Jahan Dotson's touchdown pass late in the game, big plays against the defense, and our final thoughts all together.
All right, let's get into it.
Cool. So first thing we need to address is obviously the interceptions, the turnovers, and stuff was a big reason the offense struggled. And obviously the 3 interceptions from Howell played into that. 2 of them were kind of unfortunate. The third was a bad decision. So we'll get into them here. This is the first one. Obviously it came on that opening drive. What we have here up at the top is a double post concept. So we've got De'Ami Brown on the outside running at the outside post, and you've got Logan Thomas in the slot running the inside post. And then you've got 2 crossers coming from the other side. And the real idea of this play is for these 2 double posts to kind of clear out the deep defenders to this half and get this deep over route coming underneath those crossers into that vacant space. But if you get the right look, which the Giants kind of give them here, you can occupy this safety with the inside post and clear out space for the outside post to run behind him against the corner that's meant to play with outside leverage. So as we run this on, Sam Howell actually makes the right decision here. You can see he's reading deep here, and this safety is going to attach to Logan Thomas. I don't think Logan Thomas does the best job of getting this safety out of the way. He should probably break this off more inside rather than keep it as vertical as he does. But the safety still attaches. So that leaves this corner kind of in a really bad spot because he has to play with outside leverage as part of the coverage. And that leaves De'Ami Brown able to break inside across the middle and kind of run away from the coverage. So as you'll see here, as Brown goes to break inside, this safety is not an issue for him. So Sam Howell makes the right read. The safety has attached to Thomas's route, so he can alert this post over the top. The issue is where he places the throw. And so when you have this safety biting down and attaching to this route inside, the corner is quite deep here. He's still on top of the route, but because he's playing with outside leverage, you can drag Brown across the field. And Brown, when he makes his break, cuts more inside. And trying to run away from the coverage. And that's where Sam Howell should be trying to place the ball. But as you'll see, as we run this on, Howell kind of delivers it much more vertically. And perhaps he was worried because Logan Thomas kind of kept his route quite vertical rather than working more across towards the middle. So maybe he was worried about this safety getting involved. I don't necessarily think he should have been, but instead of Brown being able to continue on his path, maybe towards where that referee is, that ball goes much more vertical, and that brings that corner right into play. And that corner ends up making the play on the ball because Brown can't catch up with it. So it's kind of an unfortunate one because it's a good decision. It's a good process from Hal. He triggers. It's not necessarily the first read, but it's one of those where if you get the right coverage, you can alert to that play. And he did. He saw that. Yeah, we got quarters coverage, and this beats quarters coverage, so I can alert that deep post. So he gets that, all the mental process right. He just doesn't get the throw executed right, and he throws it far too vertical. So the corner is able to recover and run in under it. Whereas if Howell places that ball, if I take this back just a little bit, we'll see the end zone angle. Once we get to it here.
More towards the middle of the field or towards the left hash, right, Mark? I feel like he had so much more field to work with over there to the left. Exactly.
Where you've got that referee is kind of where you want that ball being placed. Right. So De'Ami Brown, you can see here, this is the point where Brown's having to kind of adjust. Instead of going towards where that ref is, he's having to adjust to try to go back vertical because that throw really should be more inside. And in an ideal world, that throws down these hash marks. But because Logan Thomas is there, and because the corner was still on top of the route rather than just purely beaten, you probably want to lead Brown more over towards this side of the field, towards the other hash marks, but he doesn't. And, that interception is made sort of in between the numbers and the hash marks, which that ball should never really be going there, unless that corner had just been flat out beat, which he never was in that play. So yeah, it was an unfortunate interception. In the end, it wasn't like, if you're going to throw an interception on, there's never a good time to do it. But if you're doing it on the first drive where you're pinning them down inside their own 20, and you have tons of time left in the game to recover from it, it's not the worst situation. And again, the process was good. It was just poor execution. So yeah, that's pretty much the situation for the first interception.
The first interception is on Howell and the throw.
Yeah, it was on Howell's execution of the throw. The decision was fine. The concept was good. The process was good. It was just poorly executed. That's all it was. So here we've got the second interception, and this one is more kind of what you would have thought the Giants were going to do based on how they attacked in that first game. They blitzed the hell out of them in that first game. They didn't do quite so much of that in this one, but here they do. And they disguise this quite well, because this is Thibodeau down here, and you would normally expect him to be rushing. So they drop him and this guy off into coverage. The slot corner joins the rush. So they've got 5 overloading the left side of the line. Washington has quite a few deep combinations here. They've got a dagger concept down here to the bottom of the picture, and then they've got a little scissors concept up at the top, and the back, I believe, stays in to help protect. But so they will run this on. We get that overload blitz, and Sam Howell, I think, pretty early on, when he looks over, I think he's looking for the safety rotation, but I think in his peripheral vision, he can see these 2 guys dropping off. From playing the Giants in the first game, he'll probably have known when he sees a defensive end dropping off into coverage, he's getting someone from the other side. So he immediately realizes that, okay, I'm getting overloaded this way. I need to sprint out here to run away from it, to buy myself time, because with Brian Robinson in protection, we saw that all the routes assigned were all deep down the field, so he didn't have any hot route to throw. So he knows he needs to buy himself time for these receivers to work down the field and notice that he's in trouble. So pretty early on, pretty immediately, he starts to roll out to his right, which is all good. That's not a bad thing. Obviously, in an ideal situation, they spot the blitz early, they slide the protection, they get it picked up, and he's able to still stay in the pocket. But sometimes the defense disguises a good blitz, and then you have to adapt, and that's fine. So as Howell starts scrambling, as he starts rolling out to his right, he can see Jahan Dotson here is meant to just be running a clear out route, trying to occupy this safety and open up space here for, I believe it's Terry McLaurin running the dig. But Dotson looks back inside, and you can see Howell is scrambling out to the right, and he's alert enough to know, if Howell's running out that way, I'm running this, and McLaurin's meant to be breaking inside, he's going to have no one to throw to. So he quite smartly adjusts his route and pivots back outside, which is good. You obviously need to pivot and try to help the quarterback and give him an option. So as we'll run this on, you'll see he gets that safety to commit inside, and then he pins it back, turns it back outside. And you can see Sam Howell is looking at Dotson and McLaurin, or this might be even De'Ami Brown, I'm not sure. But he's looking at these 2 guys thinking, someone give me an option. And he sees, as Dotson breaks back out, obviously that safety has been beaten. This safety is nowhere in the picture. This corner is attaching to this route. So there is a ton of space down here, and you'll see that here. There is so much space for Dotson to be working in, and that I think kind of made Howell's eyes light up and think, I can hit this. I've got this throw, and this is going to be a big play. Unfortunately, he's got 2 guys closing on him pretty quick, and to make that throw, 30, 40 yards down the field, you kind of need to, unless you've got an extreme arm and you can make that throw on the run. And Howell has a good arm, but I don't know if it's that good. He has to kind of stop and try to get his feet set to give him the ability to drive that ball down the field. And he by doing that, he allows these 2 defenders to catch up. And unfortunately, they catch up and they clip his arm, and you can see that ball kind of floats on him. And the defenders are able to recover and intercept, and Dotson really had no chance. And you can see here they've got this slot corner coming over, and Howell's smart enough now. He's having seen those blitzes where that defensive end drops off. He knows that they're bringing extra guys from this side. And so he pretty immediately scrambles, which is good. It's awareness of, hey, that it's not the ideal situation, but it is the situation. So let's handle that. But here he really just has to. Obviously, we saw just how much space Dotson had, and there was a potentially huge play there. But with these guys closing in on him, and like that guy's like 2 or 3 yards away, like you just can't pull up and try to launch a ball down the field. You just don't have the time, and you'll see this arm hits Howe's arm as he tries to throw, and it just stops him making the throw, and it causes a floater down the field and very easily intercepted in the end. So
it's amazing how fast. Sorry to interrupt you, Mark. It's amazing how fast a defensive linemen are, man. It's like when you go back a little bit, like he's running potentially. You know, if you look at the more of like the expanded view, like maybe you could turn the corner if you really wanted to run or something along the lines of lap. But they just close. Look how much space there is on the bottom of the field, and they basically closed it. You know, contain him and basically get his hand on his arm. It's ridiculous. You know, that's wild.
Yeah. So. Those guys are crazy athletes.
Yeah, they are.
So,
I'd love to know if there was a metric out there for the percentage of interceptions that were like the greedy factor, right? You throw this thing out of bounds, you get to the next play, but to your point, Mark, I hadn't noticed all of that space over there, and you can see how he probably did get excited about the big chunk there. A lot of those interceptions are off guys trying to get a little greedy.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, it was definitely like there was a throw there to be made, but with those guys closing in on him, he either had to try to make that kind of throw as on the run, where maybe you jump and you try to get the velocity that way, or pull off some amazing feat where you just have incredible arm strength, like a Patrick Mahomes or whatever. But maybe he makes that throw on the run. But Howe decided the best option there was to try to pull up and set his feet, and if he'd had an extra 2 or 3 yards, maybe it was, but those guys closed in incredibly quickly, and it caused him an issue.
Mark, real quick before we move on to the next play, I've been getting a lot on the old Twitter feed about wide receivers not getting open. I'm curious, as we go through some of these offensive plays, I know you've been watching them. Is that what you're seeing, or is it more? I mean, everything is always a combination of things, right? But I mean, I'm getting more and more. Why can't the receivers get open? Have you found that has been a problem so far?
I don't think it's necessarily been a huge problem. Like, yes, they're not necessarily generating 5 yards of separation every single play, but you don't get that in the NFL. The offense is based on a lot of quick game stuff where if you're not hitting those shots down the field, the corners are going to be up and they're going to be tight to those quick game passes. And so you're not going to get as much separation. And it's not like those slant routes to Terry McLaurin have ever been an issue. Like that, he still catches those passes. And that there are certain route combinations that are run where different routes involved in the play are designed to be different aspects of the coverage. So if you get a zone coverage, one route might be the guy that's meant to be open against that coverage. But if you get a different version of zone coverage, it might be a different guy that's meant to be open. And then that first guy is actually there to occupy a zone defender to open up someone else. So quite a lot of the offense is built around using all 5 receivers to almost guarantee that one of them is going to be there. And Howell has to identify what the coverage is and get to the right guy. But the downside of that is that you're not going to have everyone creating 5 yards of separation. It's all being run, routes are being run as part of a concept to try to get one person open rather than just a bunch of go routes and hoping that someone can, or hoping that 3 or 4 guys can outrun some people. That's just not what the offense is. So, there's a little bit of they're not all getting open, but it's not to say that's by design, but the part of the idea is you're using different receivers to occupy multiple defenders and create space for the one guy that you want to get open. If that makes sense, and that answers that.
Yes.
So third interception, this one We just got a basic dagger concept. So you've got, I think it's Byron Pringle running up the seam, and I think it was Jahan Dotson running the deep in. And we've kind of talked about dagger concept plenty often here, but again, that seam route is designed to grab this safety and take him way out of the play, and that's meant to vacate big space here for the in breaker. And then at the end, you've got a tight end chipping a guy and then working down to the flat as a last second check down if you need it. And we'll see how kind of needed it on this one. But so as we run the play on, as Hal drops back, there's quite a lot of pressure. We'll come on to that from the end zone angle in a minute. Pringle gets kind of pushed off of his line a little bit more. You'd like him a lot more inside, but he gets shoved a little bit wider, and that kind of messes up with things here. And then as Dotson goes to break in, he kind of gets run into these guys. So this all kind of gets a bit messy because Pringle got pushed a bit wider. So those little details can sometimes add up. And that means that there's nobody really open for Hal as the pressure's arriving. So we'll come to the interception and the pick six bit in a minute, but we'll just wind this back a little bit and we'll have a look at the. So Giants get some pressure off of this side, and the main pressure comes from Dexter Lawrence, their all-star defensive tackle, and he's working against Chris Paul here, and Paul doesn't have his best rep. He kind of struggled in this game, but and he's had a few struggles since he's replaced Sadiq Charles. But Dex Lawrence is certainly no easy opponent to face. He's about as hard as it will get for any of these offensive linemen this year. So. But you'll see Dexter Lawrence gets his hand underneath Paul's elbow and lifts it up, and that makes it really hard for Paul to really do anything because that elbow is so high, he has no power in that arm anymore. And then Lawrence is just able to get that other arm, his inside arm underneath to rip through and keep Paul's arm up, and then he just rips through. Tyler Larson tries to come across late but doesn't really make much of an impact. Hal sees this pressure coming, so he tries to step up in the pocket, but Lawrence is kind of too close to him, and he does a really good job not to get sacked right there. And the other thing to remember, this is like 15, 16 seconds left in the fourth quarter. They're rushing to try to score, and they have no timeouts, so they can't take a sack. They have to throw this ball away and live to fight another down. So Hal does really well to avoid this sack. And then as soon as he feels Lawrence fall off of him, his first instinct is, I just got to throw this ball way over my tight end's head out of bounds. Unfortunately, the way he goes about doing that, because Lawrence was so close and nearly had him wrapped up, he feels like he just has to get rid of it. And the way he tries to do it is he jumps, and that causes him to lose all his velocity, and that floats the ball out there. And Isaiah Simmons ends up undercutting that and intercepting that and taking it all the way back to kill the game. So
Caddy was wide open.
Sorry?
I said Caddy was wide open.
Well, yeah, it wasn't really a case of, we'll come to this one, like, if we go back to the start, sorry, that's the previous interception. I took it back too far, but you're not really looking to hit Logan Thomas here. You're looking to hit these things down the field to obviously pick up a chunk play and then go spike the ball and try to have a shot at the end zone before the game ends. So this thing to Logan Thomas, like he's staying in here really to help aggressively chip this edge rusher, and then he's just releasing late. And again, it's more just we're trying to throw this ball away. I don't think he's even looking to throw to Thomas. He's just thinking, I'm under pressure here. I need to get rid of this ball. I know I should have a tight end releasing to the flat here somewhere. Let me just spin around and throw this ball. But because he jumps and he's panicked and he's rushing to throw that ball away, he doesn't get anywhere near enough on it. And Simmons is able to make up that play. And
I just meant if he had been able to get anything on it, even that little last play there, if he was just able to get it over Simmons' head, he was running for a long time.
Yeah, maybe. But yeah, the issue is, you want that ball to be 20 yards out of bounds and live to fight another day. So, so those were the three interceptions. The worst one was obviously that one because it's not the first time he's been intercepted trying to throw the ball away. And it just can't happen, obviously, and that killed the game. But for me, the actual worst play, and I've come onto it here, this one is the dropped interception, and I think quite a few fans forgot about this one.
Yeah, I remember this one.
This one,
pass interference, right?
This is the one where I think is probably one of the worst throws Howell has had this whole season. Because the process is just poor. Like generally, like as we saw with the first interception, the process was really good. He just executed the throw poorly. And the process on the second one was okay. You could see why he wanted to throw down the field to Dotson. There was all that space. He just underestimated how quick those defensive linemen were closing on him. And the third one, again, he was trying to throw the ball out of bounds. He just didn't get enough on it. So the process, again, was okay. He just failed with the execution. This one, the process is terrible. And this is, again, it's another variation of a dagger concept. You've got this deep over, which is more designed to clear out the defenders and get that dig running behind it. You've got the tight end hooking up underneath. So if you have a zone coverage, ideally you have this guy clearing out the deep defenders and this hook route getting all the underneath defenders to open to bite up and creating this big box here where that dig route is opening up. But what happens here is I think Hal sees pre-snap, he's got a single safety in the middle of the field, and he's thinking these corners down here are going to be biting up on the tight ends doing nothing down here, and that they're going to be staying low, and he could have a throw down the field here. But just before the ball is snapped, you'll see this slot defender bails out, and he bails out to a deep half, and this safety rotates over. So they actually, by the time the ball is snapped, they have two deep safeties. So if we just run this forward, you'll see him bailing out now. He's going to have that deep half, and this safety is going to rotate over. So as that happens, the safety kind of still plays in the middle of the field, but he's cheating there because he knows there's nothing on this side to worry him. So he's kind of cheating in the middle of the field because he knows the only threat is going to be from this side. So as Hal gets here, he's already sort of done his little pat of the ball and separated to begin his throwing motion. So that indicates that he's made his decision. He's going to make this throw. And it's just not there. Like this safety is clearly on the top of the route. He's also clearly the correct leverage. So he has every right to be able to jump this route and take this throw away. So why Hal thought he could make this throw, I have genuinely no idea. And it's one of the few times this year where I've seen a Hal throw that I've gone, I have no idea what you're looking at or why you're attempting this throw. But he does. And he ends up throwing it straight to that safety who jumps it. And you'll see it from the end zone angle where it just hits him straight in the chest. And it really should have been an interception. And I don't know how he didn't intercept it, to be quite honest with you. But just a horrific decision, and one that quite uncharacteristic from Hal this season. And he was lucky that he didn't get punished for it, and it could easily have been a fourth interception. And probably in terms of the decisions he made throughout the game, it was the one that deserved to be intercepted the most. So,
and where was that? And where was his first read supposed to be on that mark?
So his first read, if we'll go back to it, it's dagger is generally taught that you're going to this dig route. You can alert this deep over route if you get the right look. And I can understand why, if Howell doesn't see this slot defender bailing out and this safety does cheat in the middle of the field because he's got nothing to worry about on this side, then Howell might well interpret that as it's a single safety in the middle of the field, and this route is meant to cut across his face and run into all this space over here. But when we see the play going on, obviously that slot corner gets back very early. So that should be a pretty big indicator that actually this isn't a single high coverage. This is a two deep coverage, and this safety is just cheating. And as you can see down here, these tight ends stay into block, and then you've got the running back stay into block. So this corner is staying low, which is why Sam Howell thinks he can probably hit this over route from McLaurin over here. But the safety also knows that this is happening down here, which is why he's cheating inside. And so I can kind of understand from that point of view, but really it's a poor read because he should have seen that slot defender getting back, and he should have been alert to, okay, actually it's too deep. I don't have this throw, so I should really be working to this dagger route. This dig route, and checking down to either this hook
Okay.
underneath or
Right.
my
I
tight
was
end
gonna say,
underneath.
so technically the process is once he sees the nickel bail, he should be moving on, because you're right, Logan Thomas is wide open on the hook route there. Is that what he's supposed to be doing there? As soon as the corner bails, he says, okay, that plays out, let me get down to the check down?
When it's probably meant to go more towards this dig route first, because when you're running dagger is always meant to be, this guy's always meant to just be clearing out coverage and opening up this middle of the field for this receiver to break into. And this hook route is mainly designed to get these two guys to bite up towards it and open up that space. And you can see there is quite a bit of space between the two safeties here and the two linebackers, which is what this receiver is running into. But also because that safety is there, that safety does have the inside leverage to be able to drive down on this. So if Howell does look that way, that safety is probably a threat. So yeah, at that point, you're then thinking check down here, or even to Bates that peels off.
I saw Bates wide open on the bottom.
Yeah, once he peels off after the chip, that's probably where the ball should ultimately go. If you throw that like straight away, you could probably hit Thomas over the middle, but these guys are going to close pretty quickly on that. So you're probably the real throw probably should go to Bates down here. It definitely shouldn't be going to Terry McLaurin, which is where it does go, and he gets away with one there. So that to me was the worst decision. It obviously ultimately was dropped and didn't end up in an interception, but that one was the one that probably merited being an interception more than anything else. So that kind of covers the negatives. I don't know if you guys wanted to talk any more about the negatives, but that was the 3 interceptions and the one that should have been. But I don't know if you want to move on to balancing out with some positives, or
I definitely want to do some positives. But I am curious though, does this feel like a setback to you with Howell, or just one of those lumps you take along the road with a kid that's only got 11 or 12 starts under his belt?
Yeah, it's more the latter to me. I don't think it's a setback. I think what we've seen from Howell so far this year is that he will have bad performances, and sometimes it will be a whole game, sometimes it will be a quarter or a half or whatever. There will be bad spells for him because he's young and inexperienced and seeing things for the first time, all those things that we've talked about already. And this was just another one of those. And the interceptions are killer, but the fumbles also didn't help. Like the drives where they had those fumbles, they were moving the ball quite well. So the whole offense is to blame. And if you can isolate those 3 interceptions and the 4th bad throw, the rest of it wasn't that bad. But obviously, interceptions are killer and need to be weighted as such. So you can't really just isolate that. So yeah, it wasn't a good performance overall. But it's not one where I'm thinking, okay, we need to write him off and move on and think about drafting a quarterback. I think it's another one of those, much like the Giants game in week 7, where you think, okay, let's see how he bounces back from that. And he's got another tough matchup coming up this week against a team that's probably going to send a fair bit of pressure his way. How does he bounce back? And so far he's proven that he can do that. So let's see if he does that this week.
My initial takeaway from Howell is that everything's correctable, right? I feel like that first interception was more of an accuracy throw, more of a touch pass that maybe went errant a little bit. It could have maybe, lent it more towards the middle of the field. The second and third interceptions were more like just being in duress, right? He probably was pressing a little bit too much on that second play where he's scrambling on the outside. He saw a big play down the field, could have threw it out of bounds, or maybe was a little bit greedy on the play, but you saw what he was seeing there. And the third play was in complete, duress, and he had no really options. He basically had one last play to basically try to save the game, and he pressed the issue a little bit there too. So hopefully, maybe this is correctable. I think it is correctable, and I think hopefully next year they'll address the offensive line a little bit to give him more time, and maybe it wouldn't be so much rapid reactions.
Well, and Dexter Lawrence reckoned the game plan has been a common theme here as we've looked at the Commanders versus the Giants tape. Absolutely. All right, Mark, you have some good plays here for Howell.
Yeah, so the first one was quite early in the game. it's a little variation of something they run quite a lot, where they have Logan Thomas running this what I believe they call a Seattle route, where it's designed to look like it's a deep over route. So he comes across the middle of the field and he makes it look like he's going to break out towards the right side of the field, and he gets whatever defenders in coverage with him to start committing that way, and then he suddenly breaks back outside over to this side. You got Jeremy Brown here running a deep post, and again, that's just to clear these deep defenders and open up space, and just a little extra variation. They've got, I think it's John Bates as this tight end comes across in motion, and then he runs a wheel route up the sideline. But the throw is designed to go to Logan Thomas on this Seattle route, and it's a fairly easy read. It's more about how nice the route is from Logan Thomas. And the Giants have a little bit of a bust because they don't really have anyone near him. But you'll see from the end zone angle just how good of a throw this is from Sam Howell. As he drops back here, you can see Logan Thomas. He's got his body position and his head going this way, trying to sell that he's running this over route. And this guy, in fact, is trying to pass him off. You can see him pointing and sort of directing this linebacker to say, hey, you need to cover this guy. He's coming to your side of the field. So he thinks Logan Thomas is going that way, but Logan Thomas is actually peeling back around the back of him. So this linebacker is mistaken, thinking he's going that way. And then he's sort of seeing his mistake here as Thomas peels back, and he realizes he needs to get back underneath this throw. But Sam Howell is able to throw this ball beautifully over the top of him, layers the throw nicely straight into Logan Thomas, and it's a nice throw, real nice throw, big gain, and a nice start to the game, and that got them going down into the red zone. Unfortunately, they had a couple of bad plays in the red zone, and they ended up having to kick a field goal. But it was a nice throw, and it was one that again just kind of shows Sam Howell has some nice ability to layer that ball over that underneath coverage, and over the top of it to find his target. So I just thought it was a nice throw, one worth highlighting. And then this one.
Quickly, Logan Thomas has cobbled himself together a couple of nice games in a row. He kind of looks like he's gotten back to form a little bit to me.
He's not a bad player at all. He's just obviously he had the fumble early on, or one of the fumbles, which made them stutter a little bit. But tight ends in this offense are very big parts of the offense, and when you have the ability to sell those routes like that, especially on that Seattle route. That Seattle route has been one of their main things that they've run this year. And Logan Thomas has been one of the best guys doing it. They sometimes have like Jahan Dotson running it just to really screw with the defense and make it real hard for them to cover that. But when you're running that route from the inside, it's a lot better of a fake when it's a tight end running it, because that's the kind of route a tight end would typically run. And when you have a guy that's able to execute it like that, it makes it a lot easier. So he's picked up a little bit recently, and he's a nice target for Howell to go for.
And you glossed over the field goal, but we won't spend a lot of time on it because that's not what we do on the show. But giving the ball to Gore on first down in the red zone,
I hated that,
which I don't understand at all.
No, I hated that as well. But yes, we will gloss over that very quickly.
Keep it moving. Keep moving.
Sorry.
We'll stick with the positives with Hal. And this one, on the face of it, isn't an amazing throw. It's 3rd and 4, and it's just a slant flat combination, which we've seen 100 times this year from Washington in their quick game stuff. But though I think a sign of progression from Howell here is that the way he executes this throw. And the Giants here play a zone coverage, and typically when you get a zone coverage, that slant route's hard to throw, and you kind of ideally you're working a zone beater to the other side of the field, but they don't have that. They have another slant flat run on this side, so he decides to pick his side, and he sticks. I've got Terry McLaurin running a slant. I'm going to that, and what he does is he manipulates it open. So as we'll run this play on here, you'll see as soon as Howell gets the ball, he's thinking he kind of lines himself up to throw this flat route to the running back, and that is by design. That's to try to get these defenders to look at that running back and bite up and open up space for McLaurin. I think I've even drawn it up here. yeah, you can see where he even just before I paused it here, he just pat the ball and almost made it look like he was about to throw this thing to the flat. And again, that's a design fake, I believe, unless he really thought about throwing this. But I'm going to give him some credit here and say that he's actually doing this on purpose to get this linebacker who is meant to just be sitting in that zone and taking away that slant. But when he's got his eyes directly on Howell, and Howell does that little pump fake with the shoulder and pats the ball, makes it look like he's going to throw, he's got to then try to think, I've got to rally to this ball underneath. And what that does is vacate the spot right behind him for Terry McLaurin to run his slant. So you'll quickly see when I unpause this is Howell will, as soon as he does this, executes this little fake, he'll quickly reset his feet and throw this ball behind that linebacker to McLaurin to convert. So we'll unpause it here and you'll see he quickly resets and hits McLaurin. And the end zone angle will show it better. So the thing to watch is, again, Howell immediately gets himself lined up to Rodriguez running that flat route. And you can see him pat the ball and even start to separate by taking that ball back to kind of suggest that he's going to throw that flat route. And you just need to watch how this linebacker reacts to that. So there's that little pat and that little shoulder pump just to get that linebacker to bite up. You can see that linebacker there that started to bite up. And you can see where Howell is going to throw this ball. He's going to put it right where that linebacker is, right to Terry McLaurin behind him. So what I like about the play is that it's sorry, I wound this back too far. What I really like about the play is that he's manipulating the coverage underneath the zone defender here, which is quite an advanced thing to do. It's something we saw Alex Smith do quite a lot, where when you rely on quick game and underneath stuff and getting the ball out quickly, a lot of the time, a lot of your quick game stuff is very similar, and defenses can get a track on that. So savvy quarterbacks can kind of manipulate coverage by sort of selling fakes to certain receivers to move zone defenders just slightly and open up throwing windows. And that's exactly what you see Hal do here. And I'll just let this one run through, and it will, when you see the end zone angle, you'll see just how well he manipulates that defender out of where he is. And that just buys that little bit of space to hit McLaurin in that second window, and converts. So not a huge play, but one that, you can see that I think we've shown a slant flat pretty much every time we've been doing this show. So they've run that concept 10 times a game all season. So you can see that he is starting to get very comfortable with that and understanding that sometimes it's not always there, but he can do extra things to go above and beyond to open up routes and manipulate defenders to open up throws that he wants to throw. So that was just a short, quick play that I wanted to show to highlight that Howell is still progressing, even though he overall had a bad game, obviously, with the interceptions that we talked about. There is still some progress being made there. And then, we had the Dotson TD. If we want to move on to that, or we want to.
Yeah, let's give him at least the touchdown.
Yeah. So the Dotson touchdown was another nice throw. It was almost identical to, if you remember, the Eagles game back in week 4 when they scored late to tie up the game and everyone said Rivera should have gone for 2. It was pretty much this exact play, but Dotson was on the right of the formation rather than the left. But you'll see all he does is he runs kind of essentially a curl, but he has the ability to pivot it back outside depending on the leverage of the defender. So as he runs his route here, you can see that defender immediately opens his hip to the sideline. He plays with heavy inside leverage. So he knows that if he tries to run this as just a curl, that's not going to be open. So pretty much at this point, he already knows that he's going to be pivoting this route back outside. Howell is already looking at him out there, and he can already see that this corner is playing very heavily inside leverage, and there's a lot of space out here for Dotson to work to. So he's kind of just waiting for Dotson to get into his route. He's got a little bit of pressure here that he just very calmly sidesteps, and then he anticipates Dotson breaking back outside, and then he delivers a really nice throw out towards the sideline where only Dotson's going to make the ball. The defender's not going to have any chance to get to it. And Dotson makes that catch, gets both feet down and secures the touchdown. And you'll see it from the end zone angle here, how nicely Hal does this. He does what's called a dovetail drop, where he initially drops back straight, but because he's throwing to his left, he prepares himself to throw his left by dovetailing that drop off. And you'll see it here. You can see how rather than just dropping straight back, he dovetails it off to the side, and that gets him aligned nicely to Dotson to throw to his left. Then he gets Thibodeau kind of trying to move inside on Leno here, and he just doesn't panic, as we have seen do sometimes in this game and sometimes this season. But he does a nice job here of not panicking. He trusts Leno to cut off that inside rush. He just adjusts slightly by sliding slightly to his left, and then he delivers that throw, still on time, still with good anticipation, and puts it in a place where only Dotson can make the catch. So, yeah, good play, nice throw, nice catch, good route, and touchdown that gave him a chance. Obviously, we know what happened with the interception on the last drive, but still good effort there.
My takeaway from Howell, it's clear that he had plenty of college experience, right? He definitely has a little nuance in his game, kind of knows how to drop back and kind of do a little extra. Obviously he's still learning and developing more, but you just kind of can tell he feels comfortable in the pocket. I appreciate that. It's good.
Yeah, definitely some positive developments from him. He's obviously not perfect, and there are times when his feet are still a work in progress. But when you compare where he is now, I think I've said this publicly quite a lot. Like last year in his rookie year, in preseason, he made some nice plays, but his feet were just horrific. He was quite consistently taking the wrong drops. If it was like a 5-step drop, he'd take a 3-step drop, or sometimes if it was a 7-step drop, he'd take a 5-step drop and 3 hitches or something like that. So the footwork was just nowhere near in sync with the routes that he was being run. And I thought that was going to take him a long time to correct. And obviously he didn't play all of his rookie year until the final game. But the way he came out in that final game against the Cowboys last year, the footwork was miraculously better. Now, obviously it wasn't perfect, but it was so much better than what it was in preseason. It gave me hope that, okay, he can actually develop things rather quickly. And the question was, can he continue with that going into next year, or will more pressure in other games kind of cause him to fall back into bad habits of bad footwork? But as we just seen there, it seems to be sticking. And yeah, there are times when it's not great, but overall it's on the rise and improving. So yeah, promising.
Hey, Mark, I got a question for you, actually. Sorry, Doug.
No, you're fine.
You. So coming out of college, I heard like rumors, I think maybe John Kine might have alluded to it, about how Sam Howell's footwork was improperly taught at UNC, and maybe it was the wrong foot or the wrong type of drop. I kind of understood it, but I didn't really understand it explicitly. Like, are you familiar with what I'm talking about, and kind of like can elaborate on it a little bit?
Yeah, well, I think he might have had 2 different quarterback coaches in college,
Okay.
or offensive coordinators or something like that. So in the year where everyone said he was going to be a first-round pick if he had come out that year, before he had to go back to college and play one more year, that year he was, I can't remember which way around he had it, but he was essentially in one year he had his footwork where he had his right foot forward and his left foot back, so that when he caught the snap, he could just pivot off of that left foot onto his right foot and then just deliver the throw quickly. Whereas the second year, he would have his left foot forward and his right foot back. So the rhythm of that footwork changes. So instead of just being able to pivot off the back foot and be ready to throw, he then has to take a step and then pivot and then make his throw, and it throws off the rhythm of stuff. So I think it did mess with him a little bit, as I guess it kind of would, because if you've done something a whole season and then the next year you're suddenly being asked to change the way you position your feet, it's not necessarily natural. So yeah, it's I think that's probably what John Kime or whoever it was you heard was referring to, and it took him a little while to get back to whatever he was comfortable with. And as I say, I can't remember which way around he had it which year, but I know the second year, when he didn't have quite so great a year, he had changed the positioning of his footwork. And it's a small detail. It might seem like it's irrelevant, but it does just completely change the rhythm of how you deliver a throw. So it is an important one.
Thank you. Makes sense.
We started off with some not so good. We got to some fairly good, and I guess we'll head towards some not so good again. Mark, you brought some of these. The defense has been not good, but they've been good, but they've been giving up so many explosive plays. I think we're going to take a look at a couple of them here.
Yeah, so there was about 6 explosive plays, and quite a few of them, at least on 2 instances, they were back to back, which was kind of odd. But it meant that they kind of compiled on top of each other. Like, rather than it being an explosive play on one drive, an explosive play on the next drive, an explosive play on the next drive, it kind of meant that Washington had series where they got a 3 and out, and then a 3 and out, and then on the third drive, 2 explosive plays, and it was a touchdown. And then they'd go back to stopping them for 2 or 3 drives, and then they'd give up another 2 explosive plays and a touchdown, which was odd. But I've not got all 6 because we've only got so long on this show. I've got 4 of the explosive plays that they gave up here, and this was actually the second one, and it was one of those situations where they'd given up back-to-back explosive plays. The first one was it was that 3rd and 13 where they hit that route just behind Benjamin St-Juste and picked up 24 yards and a conversion, and that put them on the 24-yard line. And their very next play, they Washington, after they played a basic cover 2, and they gave up that 3rd and 13. So I think Jack Del Rio got frustrated and was like, right, we're going back to man coverage. So so here on the very next play, what have I done there? Found it forward a little bit too far. So on the very next play, we've gone back to man coverage. I'll just let this play through the Dotson touchdown. There we go. So we've got here, Jamin Davis is matched up man-to-man coverage with Saquon Barkley. We've got a tight split by this receiver, and that receiver is in a tight split deliberately to provide space at this side of the field for Barkley to run a wheel route behind him. And this is something we've seen quite a lot from offenses attacking Washington. Jamin Davis has improved in coverage, but most teams have tried to target him with a wheel route at some point or another, and kind of every single time he's looked a little bit dodgy. He did have one a few weeks ago where he got a pass breakup, but it was because it was an underthrown ball. He was beaten. But here we'll just see, I'll just let it roll, and Barkley, he does a little stutter here, and that's all it takes for Jamin Davis to kind of stop his feet. And you can see just that little stutter, and then Davis stops his feet, and Barkley's gone. And you'll get another little view of it here. Oh no, he runs off screen. It's a hell of a nice throw, and we'll come back to the wide angle. Sorry, I went too far. We're back at the Dotson touchdown. But it's a really, really nice throw.
What is the middle of the field supposed to be doing for us, Mark? Because as I watch this wheel route, I get that, but I'm now looking at 1, 2, 3, possibly 4 people staring into the middle of the field on our side.
So we've essentially got cover 1 across the board. So this safety is rotating back to the deep middle. So he is the last line of defense in the deep middle of the field. You've got man coverage here. You've got man coverage Kendall Fuller up here. You've got Benjamin St-Juste man coverage here. And you've got Jamin Davis man coverage on the running back. You've got these 2 guys are what are different teams call them different things. Sometimes you call them a hole player. Sometimes you call them a plugger. Essentially what they're doing is one of them will match up on this 5th receiver, which happens to be a tight end on this case, but usually it's a running back. Or in this case, it's a tight end. And essentially, if the tight end releases and works out to the left, this guy will match to him, and then this guy will sit in the hole in the middle of the field to help the crossing routes. But if this tight end moves across this way of the field, then this guy will match to him, and then this guy will sit in the middle of the field and play crossing routes. So the idea is that you have one guy in the deep middle, a second guy in the underneath middle to account for crossing routes, but you want these 2 guys working based on leverage to give them the best leverage matchup on this guy. And then everyone else is just in man coverage. So because of that, you're then left with this receiver will run some sort of in-breaking route to grab, I believe that's Forbes, and grab him and bring him inside. And that's all that is to create all this space for Saquon Barkley to do his thing against Jamin Davis. And as I say, you'll see, watch his feet. He just kind of does a little stutter, and it's just subtle but enough to get Davis to stop his feet. And that's all Barkley needs to just run by him. And then there's all this space. The safety, because he was more in the middle of the field, it's very hard for him to get outside. You generally, if you've got a guy in the middle of the field, you're generally expecting his range to be pretty much the numbers, which is he does well to get closer than that. but he's never going to get towards the sideline. And this is a very good throw. So credit
that's
to
what I was going to say,
Tom.
Mark. It's an excellent throw. I mean, it's a great athlete beating another athlete. DeVito has a dime right here. Saquon Barkley's a special player. Putting him on Jamin Davis on an island is kind of a hard ask, in my opinion.
It's not an easy spot for him to be in at all. But it is something that multiple offenses have tried to target him with. So wheel routes is something he struggles with. And when you manage to match him up against Saquon Barkley, then that's always going to be an issue. And the Giants obviously game planned for that, and it paid off. And it got them a 24-yard touchdown. So that was their first score. And then moving on to their second one. Again, Washington I think they had a couple stops in the first drives, and then they had those back-to-back explosive plays, and then they had another couple stops until I think it might have even been the second half the Giants got another touchdown before the half, didn't they? But it was in the second quarter after a couple stops. They got the Giants down to a 3rd and 1 situation, and on 3rd and 1, you're obviously thinking they're just trying to run the ball, pick up that 1 yard, and move the chains. But the Giants see it as an opportunity to attack. And they call a really nice scheme. It's one of my favorites. It's known as the leak. And the idea is that you run a play action fake. You have a tight end running out here, making it look like he's going to work out to the flat. If the quarterback is going to obviously fake the handoff, and then he's going to make it look like he's rolling out, and it's just going to look like a bootleg. So the idea is you get the defense working this way, thinking it's a run, and then working back out that way, thinking it's a bootleg. And this guy is just going to make it look like he's blocking, and then he's suddenly going to leak out on the backside here and work down that side. And it's a really good scheme, and it works really nicely. Washington don't deal with it particularly well. And we'll run it through here, and I've got a couple of diagrams in there to show how badly they deal with it. And essentially, Kendall Fuller here spots what's happening, and he recognizes that this guy's coming this way and this receiver is coming his way. So in this defense, they do a lot of passing off on crossing routes because it's it'd be impossible for Kendall Fuller to be able to stick close to this receiver and run across the field with him. He'd have to end up running through Butler and Johnson and this receiver to try to stay with him, and it's just not going to happen. So what he does is he peels off, and I don't know who should pick up this route. My guess would be Danny Johnson, but it could easily be Percy Butler. But one of them should hear a call or see a signal from Fuller that he is sinking off to cover this route and pick this crosser up. And one of these two should see that and peel off and pick this guy up. You can see that I've got those black lines that one of them should be able to pick this guy up and see what's happening. Unfortunately, neither of them do. They both end up trying to attach to this receiver. And what ends up happening is Fuller is the only one that recognizes what happens. And he tries to get over the top because he recognizes that these two guys have gone with him, but he's just got no chance. But he knows that this is the issue, and he's trying to go over the top to make the play. But you'll see, obviously, he's wide open. It's a real nice design. They should have passed it off better. And Fuller had no chance of stopping that catch. But once the ball is caught, he does well to keep the play alive and get over there. And then he just gets sold by a little stutter step, stops his own feet, and then the guy bursts up the sideline and he misses the tackle, which isn't great. But it happens. But the real crime on the play was that neither Johnson nor Butler, my guess would be Danny Johnson probably should have peeled off and picked up that route, but it could well have been Percy Butler. I would guess it would be Danny Johnson. That would typically be the way it would be defended. So one of those two should have seen that was what was happening and or heard a call and peeled off to pick it up, but they didn't. And touchdown.
Where was Curl lined up on that play? Because I feel like Danny Johnson, Percy Butler, they're not necessarily our higher end defensive backs. Maybe poor communication, lack of chemistry, maybe led to that on pass off. Like, I guess, is he more in the linebacker spot right there? Is that what's going on?
Yeah, he's down here in the box.
Gotcha.
He's still a strong safety, but he's with this tight end, and this tight end is the one that's selling the fake to the flat. So you'll see Curl actually at the snap sprints across to try to cover that, and then this tight end ends up staying in to help block on this side instead of working out.
Gotcha.
But yeah, that's you'll see Curl's here, and that's he goes across with that motion, and he does a real nice job. He understands exactly what's meant to be happening, so he gets outside real early. And if this had just been a bootleg, Curl would have been there to stop that.
Yep.
And he had a number of plays like that in this game where he was in the right spot and was ready to stop things and save things, but unfortunately, the rest of the defense weren't doing their job.
One more before you get on to the next play, Mark. I'm curious.
Yep.
Cody Barton is back this week, which means no more Jamin Davis having to wear the dot. How much do you think that actually makes a difference for this defense with Mayo out and David in? I'm not suggesting there's a huge difference between the two guys, but they obviously had brought in Barton for a reason. How much do you think he helps this week?
It depends on which version of Cody Barton they get. If they get the guy from the first few games before he got hurt, it probably doesn't make much of a difference at all because Barton wasn't playing to that good a level. Unfortunately, the game he got hurt, he had a fantastic game, was that Falcons game. He finally started to see things a lot quicker and was reacting a lot quicker. And that was a guy that could really help this defense because he was playing the Mike linebacker spot. He was solid in coverage, which is Mayo's big downfall. But he was also the issue that he was having earlier in the season where he was reading run plays really slow and being late to fill his gap. Against the Falcons, that just miraculously disappeared, and he was suddenly, everything seemed to click for him, and he was hitting things real quick. And then obviously being the Mike linebacker takes that responsibility off Jamin Davis for calling plays, and that allows him to just free up and read and react. And that's where he's been at his best this year. And then Barton isn't the liability that Mayo is in coverage, because in this game Mayo actually had quite a few nice plays.
He did have great first half. Yeah,
yeah. He had quite a few nice plays where he was adding on as a rusher, and so he wasn't having to cover as much. And when he was part of the run defense, he was really good. So he actually played pretty well in this game. This is one of the best games he's played in a while. But he is kind of a guy that typically would be targeted in coverage, and obviously Barton is much more athletic and not quite the liability that Mayo is typically in coverage. So I think if you get the Cody Barton that was just before he got injured, I think it's a significant upgrade. But if you get the guy that they had at the start of the season where he was really slow to read things, then you're kind of just trading off his ability in coverage versus Mayo's ability against the run.
Also, just seeing the end of that play there reminds me why it's so important for these All-22 Tuesdays and why we have to remember that in the moment you may feel one way. I remember totally thinking that Kendall Fuller was washed and couldn't get there in time. And then we go back and look at it, it's like poor Kendall Fuller was on it, man, and then just got bumped and couldn't get there in time. So
Fuller's smart.
That's why it's so important to rewatch these things.
Yep. So we'll move on to another explosive play. This is the third of the four that we've got. And this one was the first explosive run where just after Chris Rodriguez had a couple nice runs and then he fumbled the ball. And I actually tweeted it would be typical for Washington to give up an explosive play. And then lo and behold, straight away they gave up an explosive play. And yeah, it's a frustrating one because this is a crack toss scheme, and crack toss schemes are something that Washington, in this defense where they played, as you see here, two high safeties, it's something that they have struggled with, and it's something that it's a systematic choice that it's very hard for the safeties to get down and make this run stop. So it's something that they have struggled with, but as of late, they'd actually done a really nice job. Like the last 3 or 4 weeks, they've actually hardly given up a yard on crack toss runs, and so they've been doing really well. So it was a little bit of surprise that the Giants even decided to do that because they had been defending it so well. But the thing they do really well here is they get this bunch set to the right of the formation. I know there's quite a lot of lines and it's confusing, but we'll talk through it. We've got a little bunch set with two receivers and a tight end. And what you see is the tight end blocks down on Andre Jones inside. You've got the outside receiver that will block down on Benjamin St-Juste in the slot. That will pin these two guys on the edge inside. You've got the third receiver that's the inside guy. He's going to peel around those two receivers and go and kick out Kendall Fuller on the edge. I think this might actually have been a cornerback blitz from Washington because if I remember rightly, Forbes actually comes up and Fuller comes up pretty aggressively. But because Fuller comes up aggressively, this receiver is able to just kind of kick him out. And what that does is creates a big gap in the defense on the edge where you've got these edge guys pinned inside, you've got Fuller kicked outside, and there's a big lane between them. And to fill that lane, you need the linebackers to get over the top of it. But because these edge guys are pinned inside, you've got the two offensive linemen, the left guard and the center, that are also pulling out to the edge, and they act as lead blockers for Barkley, who gets the toss. So we'll just play it out a little bit here. And we'll just see at the start here, you'll see these guys crack down inside, and this receiver comes and picks up Fuller. And yeah, you'll see Forbes is blitzing. So I think it's that play where they blitz both corners off the edge, expecting a run. And so because Fuller is blitzing rather than just holding his position, this guy is able to just kind of kick him out a little bit easier than he would be if Fuller wasn't blitzing. So you can see Fuller kicks him out. You can see Andre Jones and Benjamin St-Juste have been pinned inside, and these two linemen have pulled around to the edge. And you can see there's already a big gap between St-Juste and Jones and Fuller on the edge. That's not an ideal gap because you're going to have. We'll see it from the end zone angle. Both these linemen are going to run through that. You could run a truck through that. But the other issue is that because these guys will get pinned inside, David Mayo kind of gets over there. You need Percy Butler to rereading this and getting involved quickly. And you need Jamin Davis getting over there quickly because you've got two guys coming up. And to fill the gaps, you got to fill the outside shoulder, the gap between them, and the inside shoulder of this guy. So there's three gaps with two linemen. And you've got three guys here, but with Butler, Mayo, and Davis, but they need to get there. And you'll see that Mayo gets there. Jonathan Allen tries to peel off late, but he's not really going to be a factor in this. He actually gets picked up by this guy. And Davis and Butler don't do a great job here. Butler's already late. Davis is also a bit late. And Butler comes down and takes this outside shoulder, which I guess is fine. What happens is Davis also tries to get outside, and they end up with both guys outside and nobody inside. So you can see because Barkley's going out there, Butler does a nice job of actually going outside to try to force this back inside. But then he goes aggressive and tries to make the play and misses the tackle. And Davis kind of is just on, I see him going out there, I'm running out there myself. Whereas he should see, I've got help out there. I've got Mayo working out there. This should be coming back inside towards me, and I fill my gap here. So he doesn't do that. And they miss the tackle there. And then Barkley is off to the races, and Cam Curl's the one to bring him down. We'll get a better view of that from the end zone, but you don't see this quite so as well. So I wanted to show the overview first. So you can see these guys getting pinned inside. You can see this guy peeling out to kick out Fuller, and then you've got this huge gap between your edge defender here and your corner that's meant to replace him here. That is a huge gap, and that's exactly what the crack toss scheme is designed to do. But then, you've got Mayo coming across. He reads it well. He's just not good enough to beat both blockers, which is understandable. Butler's a little bit late, and Davis is late as well. Butler kind of pauses, waits for Barkley to declare that he wants to go outside, and he knows I need to fill outside to make sure that doesn't come out and force it back inside. But the problem is that Davis is kind of playing with blinkers on and just looking straight at Barkley and not aware of where his teammates are and thinking, okay, he's going outside, I'm running outside. Because you can kind of see Jonathan Allen gets this guy to peel back inside, and that fits that gap. David Mayo and Butler kind of fill this gap, but there's a gap here between these two linemen, which Davis should be filling, and he doesn't. So Barkley takes that outside. Both Mayo and Butler end up missing, and because Davis overpursues this to the edge, this is an incredible cut as well, I will say. Barkley gets back inside this lineman, but you can see where the gap is now. He gets back inside, and then it's off to the races, and Curl does a nice job, and Fuller does well to hustle back, and they eventually force him out, but I think it was 36 yards or something like that. It was a tough one. Do we have time to do the one last explosive play?
Yeah, let's run it.
So very shortly after that, they had another explosive, which it didn't end up in a touchdown, but it put them in the red zone. And it's kind of a variation on that leak play that we saw earlier. It's designed to look like a run, and you get the linebackers biting up. But instead of having a guy on this side of the line leaking out, you have the fullback coming straight up the middle, making it look like he's going to block, and then he leaks out. But it's essentially the same idea. And all that really happens here is you'll see they've got a little bit of window dressing with this receiver going in motion. That doesn't really matter. You'll just see these three linebackers all bite up real heavy on the run fake, and nobody stays with the fullback. And so, yeah, as I say, they've got this window dressing. You can see here Mayo and Davis bite up real quick. Hudson bites up. Nobody stays with the fullback. And you've got St. Juste having to deal with that post. You've got Cam Curl also having to deal with that post, which means nobody's here for the fullback, and he's wide open. And actually, Cam Curl identifies what the issue is and comes down to make the stop, which saves it from being a touchdown. But obviously, he can't prevent the play. One of these linebackers should be able to pick up that fullback, and he just kind of slips out. And you can see Mayo obviously realizes the issue late. I don't think it's Mayo's guy. I think it was probably more likely Davis's, but yeah, that's just kind of the effect that play action can have sometimes, and left him wide open down the sideline for another explosive play, which I think they went and scored. I think Saquon Barkley went and scored a touchdown a few plays later after that. So yeah, that was 4 of the 6 explosive plays they gave up, and it was just it's every single week. It seems like they give up a couple of explosive plays, and it's just something that it's just a gut punch to the defense.
And at terrible times too. Like, not that there's a great time to give up explosions, but it definitely. You said it earlier. It felt like there was a turnover we had, or there was a penalty, and you just knew, like, oh man, the next play they're getting ready to get a chunk. You just know, because that's how they do. George, before we get out of here, like, what is your takeaways from today's film breakdown session?
It's interesting. It seems like calibration. It's little small refinements, right? I feel like the team does a pretty good job on 90% of the plays, 85% of the plays, but it's always like a couple little small things can lead to big explosive plays or big explosive mistakes. And I think that's kind of what's been happening and kind of plaguing the team all year long. That's kind of my big takeaway. What about you, Doug?
I couldn't agree more, George. The more we watch these, the more it's the little tiny nuances of what's supposed to be happening. Just in these couple of explosive play clips alone, I can't even count how many times Mark said, and there he realized what it was, and then he's off to the races somewhere. And it just feels like we have too much of that, where it's like 2 seconds later they realize, oops, we've been had, and we're trying to figure out how to get to the right spot. And again, I don't know, the enemy says that the defense was too easy to see, and our guys say that the defense is too hard to adhere to. So somewhere in between those two stories is the truth. And unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get there this year. Mark, what do you think we'll be talking about next Tuesday?
It's tough because
question, Doug.
It would be so typical of this team to have put out that performance against the Giants in a game where they should be winning very comfortably and lose terribly, for them to then turn around and compete with a team like the Cowboys that should be blowing them out. Certainly based on their most recent performance. So it would be very, very Washington for them to turn around and suddenly put in a good performance. But I certainly don't have the guts to say that that's what's going to happen. I guess the more likely thing is that the Cowboys are going to do what we think they're going to do. They're going to send a lot of pressure. Mike Parsons is going to be very, very hard for the offensive line to handle. And it's going to be another poor performance, and people are going to be calling for jobs. And, maybe with the extended kind of semi-bye week that they have, maybe someone does lose their job. Obviously, that's not a nice thing to think about, and you don't want anyone to be losing their job. But I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case.
All right, fellas, good stuff here. We'll do it again next Tuesday. Thank you.
All right, gentlemen.